believe in this church. So congratulations to you. You guys are keeping this church going and making a difference in your community. So good work. You've got a strong, well-managed endowment. The strength of that endowment growing so substantially over the last 10 years. Very striking, well-managed, well done. You're getting distributions from it that are helping you with your core mission. That's fantastic. It's a fantastic resource. You've had a steady, committed course since COVID. You go back and look at your statistics. You've pretty much had regular attendance at 52 since 2022. So basically, you've maintained that core. You're a light to the community. You make a noticeable impact. Now, the other side. The combination of the loss of members in attendance and the increasing cost of maintaining the physical plant that's meant for a larger congregation means that without lowering costs and strengthening membership, the church is going to be on a decline. So this is the time to address that. It is by no means too late. This is exactly the time to address it, is now. So, before you're all like, oh, our church is so, it's our church, something's wrong with our church, let me assure you, no. There's nothing wrong with your church. There's something wrong with the church in the United States of America. That's the problem. So we're going to talk about that now for a minute. So, numbers show what's happening. The percentage of people that attend a Christian church on any given weekend is far below what pollsters report. Pollsters report 40 to 47%. That's not true. The real number? 17%. Yeah, see, and doesn't that make sense if you think about it? Doesn't that make sense? Lots of people say they're Christian, and can't dispute whether they are or not. But only 17% of Americans are in church. So, you've got a question.
Sorry, yes. Is that 17% of the total population or 17% of the individuals?
No, this is 17% of the total population. Total population. Well, that would really be that. I don't know. Well, arguably, since most people say they're Christian in the United States, maybe. But no, actually, most don't. 40 to 47%. That's the other thing. They're actually not claiming to be Christian. So over 50% of Americans are not even claiming to be. A lot of people are not even claiming to be Christian anymore. That's another one. Now look at this map. So blue means churches are in decline. Pink means they're rising. Which state is pink?
Hawaii.
Let's go to Hawaii, guys. That's what we should be spending this million endowment money on. In North Carolina, you'll see that North Carolina church attendance is down by 16% between 2010 and 2020. So 16% fewer North Carolinians attended church between 2010 and 2020. Average weekly attendance among U.S. congregations. 2000, it was 137. 2020, 65. This is before the pandemic. So you're talking about average attendance cut in half before the pandemic. How many congregations are growing? In 2000, 53% of congregations were growing. In 2020, 34% were growing. And again, this is before the pandemic numbers. So even before we hit the pandemic, there was a problem. So now you were talking about children in churches. I get it. I've seen this my whole career. Where are the kids? Not enough kids. While the proportion of children in churches has declined fastest since 1998 in white mainline congregations, no Christian group has escaped this trend. It appears that all congregations are aging, but white mainline congregations are older than others and are aging at a faster rate. Now, the other thing is families are having less children, or they're not even having them. They also are prolonging the time when they're ready to have children. They wait longer. This is just a cultural trend. It just happens to be super magnified in churches, where only 17% of Americans are even attending church right now. So it really looks bad when you narrow the trend down that much. So 56% of adults in a typical mainline congregation are over 60 years of age. Now, and I've told the committee this, and I'll tell you all, that is not an entirely bad thing. I'm sure so many of you are very glad to hear that, but that is not an entirely bad thing. It's not entirely bad. No, I mean, what I tell people is the backbone of your church are people from 50 to 70. And the reason is they're empty nesters, they're generally at the height of their earning capability, they've got lots of free time, and they've got lots of experience and commitment to generate to the church. The 50s to 70s are always your backbone in a church. But you've got to have the younger generations who arrived at 50. You gotta get them there. So you just gotta keep feeding the beast. So estimated 50% of adults are single. Think about how much we think about, we've got to gear our ministry to families. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying I've hardly ever heard of a church, except for some of the evangelical churches, that consciously engage their churches as an mission outreach to singles. You can take a picture of this and you can look at all these statistics in the Faith Communities Today report, which is an incredible report. It's 4 years old, but I think its predictions and analysis are right on. So now church attendance is way down since COVID. These are now we're into some post-COVID numbers. So we're down. Our attendance. It depends on how you register your attendance, how you measure your attendance. So 20% of Americans attend church every week. It says, or actually now we're saying like 17%. But about 41% of Americans are in monthly church attendance. So that means you've got, I think you've got, as you know, you've got people who attend at different rates. And so it's striking that right now, we've got this large number of people who attend church who are only coming maybe once a month or twice a month. It's not that same regularity that we all remember from when we were younger. And then 57% of Americans seldom or never attend religious services. There's just been a radical decline since the turn of the century. Now, the churches that are losing most members, first of all, it's been the main ones, us. Been seeing declines, especially since the year 2000, longer than that in my experience. But PCUSA, the Episcopal Church, and the United Church of Christ, y'all, lost 40% of your members in between 2020 and 2020. 40%. All right. Now, the evangelical churches, a lot of these big box churches that we see around, they were growing, but you know what? Since COVID, church attendance by all denominations is showing lowest attendance rates ever, including these conservative evangelical churches. Something has happened to Americans that just don't attend church. Just don't. Now, here's something interesting. More millennials are coming to church post-COVID. This is a real interesting trend. They were about 21% of millennials. Now, remember, millennials are people born between 1981 and 1996. Excuse me, my daughter is sort of a late stage millennial. She's 33. My son is Gen Z, so he's 28. So you're talking about people for millennials, you're talking about people born between 1981 and 1996. Before the pandemic, 21% of them were going to church. Since the pandemic, 39% are going to church. That's very interesting. Very interesting statistic. Your average church sees a 10 to 15% attrition rate every year. Yeah, attrition, people leaving, dying. Churches are still recovering from post-pandemic losses. Y'all are not alone. Average congregation in America is at 85% of its pre-COVID attendance. 85%. So let me go back on, let me just ask one from that. Any thoughts on any of that? Comments?
I was just thinking that the 39% increase in individuals are more of the contemporary churches.
It does strike me that that's probably pretty likely. Yeah. Right, it's true. It is true. And this is an interesting point, John. There's a trend of churches renaming themselves, which is also generally a way of restyling themselves. And that, interestingly, includes denominational churches. There are Methodist churches that do not call themselves Methodist. And various Baptist churches don't call themselves Baptist. What they're trying to do, they're trying to present themselves as a fresh face in a fresh way. And it seems to work in a lot of cases. Yeah.
You think there's a moral decline with church decline?
Boy, that's a loaded question.
I just think there may be.
Yeah, I'll come back for another seminar on this. Yeah, I got some strong opinions. But I do think that there is, an observation I have, and I can present statistics on it, is that increasingly, that we saw that statistic earlier, that 47% of Americans claim to be churchgoers, some 50-something claim to be Christian, but since only 17% of Americans are going to church, well, what's happening with these people? Well, what's happening is that we're living in such, I think that what's happened is we're living in such a polarized society that what's happening is that a lot of people are mistaking their politics for their religion. And I think and I'm concerned about that trend, because I think that's where you run the risk of people, when you start identifying your political ideology with your religion, you basically, you basically create a situation where you've got government and faith mixed together. That is a very dangerous combination. So. That's funny, we talked about that in the committee too. It's an open question, and there was, I remember when COVID was ending, there was actually an editorial that ran in the New York Times, written by church experts saying, churches should immediately stop doing anything online. Because you're killing your church attendance, you're killing your church engagement by having worship and Bible study and everything like that online. But then tons of other consultants have viewed this entirely differently. Zach, you had a story, right, about, tell your story about how you discovered the church.
So essentially, hopefully everybody can hear me. Essentially, I was without a church for quite a while, and then I did some online shopping, if you will, of churches, and where I watched several of them, and First Reformed being one of them, and I watched a few. I even went back, during the pandemic, pre-pandemic, and everything like that, just to see, if it was consistent, if I liked it, and that's actually one of the reasons why I chose First Reformed, is because of what is on my presence to the values of the church hold. That I was able to fully experience the church without actually coming to that church, but then I made the conscious decision to come to the church once I knew this is where I wanted to go.
So I am of the opinion that the online presence is good. That I don't really honestly believe that the people who are watching worship at home would really otherwise necessarily be motivated to come to your church if they weren't watching it. You know what I mean? So I feel like you're getting a lot more bang for your buck by having online opportunities for people than you would be getting if you didn't have them. The odds are good that there are some people watching your worship who otherwise would not be in any way involved in your worship or your church. And Zach's a good example of how that can work out to your advantage. And increasingly, for the past 15 or 20 years in my ministry, when people join the church and we would ask them, why did you join the church? The first thing they'd say was, we went online. And we looked up a bunch of churches and we looked up key things. And now that we've added video worship to the process, I think that really, it more enhances it than anything else. That's my insight on this. Any other questions? I think the homebound is, I think this is really key. I think it's been such a blessing to our homebound members to have online worship. So I completely think it's a vital outreach as much as anything else. And especially, if you're just doing something like streaming it, it's for very little cost, I think there's a lot of benefit. So that's my thought. Other thoughts? Yeah.
I made this comment in one of our committee meetings. We live in a day where society has made it very difficult for people to attend services every single Sunday. I myself have to work, and I have to work some Sundays. And being able to watch it back and still be a part of that service on Sunday at any part during the week really helps me when I'm at work on those Sundays. So, it's not a Monday through Friday society.
No.
Not even Monday through Saturday society. It's a Monday through Sunday, 24/7 society.
And this is another point. Our culture actually makes it extremely difficult for people to go to church. It is extremely difficult. A main reason you don't see a lot of families in church on Sunday morning is because their kids have soccer. A main reason you don't see a lot of people like Zach in church on Sundays because they have to work. This is Sunday to Saturday work week, weekends are loaded for families. And Sunday mornings are not, people just don't reserve Sunday morning for worship anymore. Yes?
And more people or families have not just two jobs for the main people in the family, but 2 or 3 jobs.
That's right. And all of this goes to the point that your challenge, the challenge, you've got the same challenge every church has. It's not y'all that's the problem. But we have, we're fighting against cultural trends that are very difficult and challenging. So the challenge is, how do you thrive in a situation where there's so much coming up against you? And that's sort of, and I think that's quite possible to do that. But, it's adaptability that matters. The way the church has survived for 2,000 years it has adapted constantly to hostile environments. I told Elizabeth in the committee, I just finished a book. That was the history that was basically the history of dinosaurs. History of dinosaurs. And so, and what you discover is that, and you discover a whole lot about dinosaurs and how they evolved over millions and millions of years. But then you realize, so are there dinosaurs today? And the answer is, of course, you've probably all heard, birds. Birds are descended from dinosaurs. You know what? No. Birds are dinosaurs. That's what scientists say. Birds are dinosaurs. So, that little bird on your lawn used to be a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It used to be a Brontosaurus. It used to be an Allosaurus. A Petasaurus. It used to be, and now it's like, a little robin singing in your bushes just afraid of a cat. And so, and should be. So what dinosaurs did was evolve to a radically changed world and become something you would never have imagined was a dinosaur. So that's sometimes what we need to do as a church. And I think we are in that kind of time. Does that make sense? I'd like us to take a moment now, and we're gonna do breakout groups. And we've got a couple of questions that I'd like you to answer, and they're gonna help us get at values, what's important, what we care about in the church. So if I can have the team members just take some of the put a piece of this paper on it at every table and markers.
Eight tables.